I'll do now, But I really appreciate the opportunity, Pastor. Thank you. Having been in the pastoral ministry for 16 and a half years, I do know that it's a great honor for a pastor to give someone their pulpit when they're out of town. So I do appreciate that, and thank you for the opportunity. So I was looking at the announcements, and I saw that President's Day is tomorrow. And holidays and actually special days don't really click with me anymore since I'm at home all the time. But I see that tomorrow is a holiday because running for president is a very expensive endeavor. And it's astonishingly expensive. It helps if you have lots of friends with deep pockets. According to this OpenSecrets.org, candidates for the office of the President of the United States spent a cumulative $5.7 billion on the 2020 election campaign. That makes me sick to my stomach because $5.7 billion can do a lot of things for a lot of people who need it worse than someone running for the president. Then Senator Joe Biden set a record by raising more than $1 billion in campaign contributions. The incumbent president, Donald Trump, raised $774 million, which is not quite a billion, but Biden surpassed that. But that Trump's was even a record until Biden surpassed it. Spending millions of dollars in an effort to take up residence at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue seems to be a losing proposition, especially since the president only makes about 400,000 plus benefits per year. So why do they even want to be president? What is their purpose? What is their aim in becoming president of the United States? They spend nearly $1 billion to land a job that pays far less and just doesn't make financial sense. So why do they do it? It can be summed up in one single word. That's power. Power. The President of the United States is widely regarded as the most powerful person in the world. The chief executive's influence extends around the globe. So they think they have to have the power. The one stroke of the pen can send our troops to fight on foreign soil. Executive orders are written by one president's signature. There's so much power in that office. So they're willing to spend a lot of money they probably didn't really have, and obviously if it wasn't for contributors, they wouldn't be able to, just for the privilege of having that level of power. There's influence and prestige that comes with a steep price tag. By the way, have you ever looked at before and after pictures of presidents? When they took office versus when they left office, they all have gray hair, they have more wrinkles, they look awful because of that power, but yes, the responsibilities of the office of president. So if you want to be the most prominent political figure in the world, it seems you need to be willing to do nearly anything to earn that privilege. If you have the book, the Sunday school curriculum, you will be able to read all about that. I kind of highlighted a little bit of it and didn't read word for word. I'm not much on verbatim reading whenever I'm teaching. I prefer to look at your faces and see how you're responding. Also, if for any of you who were here that one Wednesday night that I spoke, you know I'm a fan of pictures behind me, right? So this is a little bit different because I have to follow a curriculum guide, but I have added in some pictures for your enjoyment. Okay. All right. So I don't have any of that in front of me, so I have to turn. The kingdom values, putting others first, is what we're talking about today. The historians will argue endlessly about which U.S. president should be considered the greatest. But 4 have been immortalized in a fashion none of the other 40-plus presidents can claim. Sculptor Gutzon Borglum blasted the likenesses of George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, Abraham Lincoln, and Theodore Roosevelt into the granite face of Mount Rushmore, creating an iconic monument that draws more than 2 million visitors to South Dakota's Black Hills every year. Is the picture up there? Yay! Awesome. So I just wanted to say, be careful, though, if you research your historical figures and facts about them, your hero might fall from their pedestal really quickly if you do. sometimes I've thought, oh, he was a great president, and then I read a little bit about him, and I'm like, oh, nope, not such a great president after all. And a lot of their private lives are they're full of sin. And, so if you want to think of them in a good light, don't research about them, all right? That was thrown in there for free, because I am a researcher extraordinaire, and once I research, I'm like, oh, I wish I didn't know that about that person. Most of us will never see our likenesses carved in the side of a mountain, but most of us would like to think that our influence and legacy will live on even after we leave this world, that we will not be forgotten. I know personally, on a personal level, for the last 2 years, I've been astounded at the people that will message me, text me, call me, or I will see them out and about at a function or something, and they will say to me the influence that my husband and his ministry and his life had upon them. And I thought, that man would never believe it. He did not like the limelight. He called it flying beneath the radar when it came to his ministry. But he really impacted a lot of people. In the middle of winter, Kellys were at his funeral. The middle of winter, with COVID rampant, he had 275 plus people at his funeral. So, ice and snow, so it was just, you can see that his influence was far-reaching. But I know that wasn't his goal. His goal was to reach heaven, and that's all that mattered to him. Jesus addressed this basic human desire when he told his disciples, Mark 10:43, "Whoever desires to become great among you shall be your servant." Jesus explained the road to true greatness doesn't run along the path of self-promotion, or whenever you have authority that has no reins on it. Jesus said that's not how you achieve greatness in the kingdom. Greatness is not about commissioning a sculpture in your honor or gaining 1 million followers on social media. True greatness comes when one person humbly serves another, even when no one else notices. In Jesus' case, he said the disciples didn't really understand what he said by that, so he added this in Mark 10:44. "And whoever of you desires to be first shall be slave of all." I don't like the sound of that, do you? I don't think his disciples did either. In fact, I know they didn't. They really questioned that whole concept. They were convinced that Jesus came to free them from Roman rule, and he was going to do it with an army and with all the power that would be invested in the Messiah. Their concept was incorrect, obviously, because we know that Jesus came and he said, I didn't come to destroy the law or change all this stuff. He even told them, you have to obey the rules of Caesar, whatever those are. Pay taxes, do whatever you have to do. He said those things to the disciples, and so many times, including this instance, they did not understand what he was saying. If you want to be great, you have to become a servant. That's totally against anything that the world teaches or believes. So Jesus then asked his disciples about an argument that they were having. They were, I imagine, and you could imagine, they were extremely humiliated when Jesus asked them what they were arguing about. They had good reason to be embarrassed. Mark 9:34 reads this. They had disputed among themselves who should be the greatest. That would be like if we're standing out there in the foyer and we're all talking about who's going to be the best, who does pastor like the most, who's going to be exalted next. That's what they were doing. Amongst themselves, they were disputing. They were arguing about who was going to be the greatest. And Jesus knew it. Even if he hadn't overheard them, which he probably did, he already knew they were disputing, and they should be embarrassed because he caught them right in it. They probably blushed as they shared this with him, realizing just how silly their argument had been. Sometimes, and I thought this was very important, I put big exclamation points out beside it, this point. Sometimes the best way to gain perspective on a disagreement is to take it to Jesus and confess it audibly to him in prayer. If you're having some kind of issue with somebody, take it to them, obviously. That is the scriptural way. But take it to Jesus first. See what he says about it. you might be humbled. You might say, ooh, I didn't like that, Jesus. And he's like, yes, but if you want to be a part of my kingdom, you have to be the servant of all. Concern about social standing is an inborn human trait. We are all born with it. I don't care how much of an introvert you are, how much of an extrovert you are. If you'd rather be a hermit and live in a mountain somewhere, you still desire to be thought well of by other people. It's an inborn human trait. We want to be known for making the best grades or being the most athletic. By the way, I was winded walking up the stairs a while ago, so obviously not in that category whatsoever. Or being the most physically attractive. Even in adulthood, we don't shake that obsession. You know, peer pressure is a huge thing for teenagers, right? It is among adults also. We all want to be that person that everybody likes, that everybody looks up to. That's just something we want. As humans, we desire that. We want to drive the nicest car, live in the biggest house, or make the most money, and we're willing to exhaust ourselves to attain those status symbols. It's sad, but it's true. All of us. There's not a person in this room that can say, oh, not me. I never did. Even if you live in the smallest house and have the least amount of money, you still desire to have more. You desire to be thought better of. Everyone does. So we exhaust ourselves to attain those status symbols, and it has been widely observed that we will spend money we do not have to impress people we do not even like. Is that true? Yeah, it is. Even people of faith, even we as believers, we're not immune to this at all. This social posturing. We debate among ourselves who's the most gifted singer in the apostolic ranks. I have a favorite. Yeah, we can have our favorites, but that doesn't mean that we're necessarily right. But we want this person to be used and this person to be exalted because they're our favorite, right? We debate among ourselves. Who's the most gifted preacher or singer or musician? Or which church conference is the one to go to? This is the one. You can't miss this conference. And there are a lot of them, by the way. If you want to go to church conferences, I could fill my calendar right now just going to conferences for the year. All kinds of them. But those, you want to find out which one's at the top of the list because we work so hard for our own church and our ministry here, and we should. We work so hard for others to look at New Life UPC in Tullahoma and say, oh, that's a great church, right? I mean, if we're honest, that's what we do. We all feel that way, and we should. You should really love your church. You should be proud of your church. And we try hard, and I know Pastor tries hard, and I know the different teams in this church try hard to be successful at what they do. And that's amazing that they do that because nobody wants lackadaisical leadership. And nobody wants team members who aren't on board. Nobody. So we do want that, and we want to be that way. We work hard so we'll be highly regarded by our peers. Like the disciples, we want to be in that conversation when everybody's discussing greatness. Oh, that's us. Yeah, they were talking about us. We want to be that way, right? So then those disciples, they might have been just a little bit surprised when Jesus did not immediately rebuke them. They were expecting him to. No, that's not how we behave as disciples, right? That's what they thought he was going to say. Instead, he used that moment to teach them a lesson that still applies for us today. In Mark 9:35, it says this. And he sat down and called the 12 and said unto them, if any man desire to be first, the same shall be last of all, and servant of all. Now, you're all quiet, and I imagine those disciples were pretty quiet by then because they're like, I don't want to be first. I want to be first. Who's going to be first? It's going to be me. I'm closer to him. He called me first. I was the first one he called. I'm going to be first, right? But when he rebukes them in this way, by teaching them a lesson, they got quiet. To illustrate his point, Jesus took a child in his arms, and he said to his disciples, Mark 9:37, whosoever shall receive one of such children in my name receiveth me. And whosoever shall receive me receiveth not me, but him that sent me. Now you have to understand, especially in Jewish culture, children were not thought highly of. Even today, we tend, oh, sweetie, now go on, do your thing, right? Get out of the way. We love our children, and we love the children of the church, but sometimes they kind of get in the way. Well, that's the way the disciples were. Hey, he's too important. Why are you bothering him? Jesus is he's a teacher. He's a rabbi. We are enjoying all of his lessons. Get those kids out of here. And Jesus tells them, if you don't receive them, you're not receiving me. Now, that's pretty blunt. We have to remember that Jesus thought highly of those in this world that others did not. Yeah, think about that. Because he even talked, I was just listening to a lesson this week by Brother Ken Gurley, and he was talking about the woman at the well. I mean, Jesus went to her. He made a point of going through Samaria that day to talk to the woman at the well. And obviously her life was not one that anybody looked up to. She had had 5 husbands, and the one she lived with then wasn't even her husband. And she came to the well at noontime when nobody else was there because she knew what people would say about her. And Jesus said, no, this is the one I care about. So he made a point of this. So he's teaching the disciples a lesson here by calling these children and said, if you don't receive them, you don't receive me. And if you don't receive me, you haven't received him who sent me. Of course, we know that Jesus was God, but in the flesh, he was talking to them and saying, the man Jesus was saying, if you don't receive me and my teachings, you don't receive God, period. Now, a picture of children. Children usually don't worry about things most adults obsess over. Children probably won't commend you on your Sunday school lesson that you took so much time making perfect, right? Or they won't lie awake at night fretting about who wasn't at church last Sunday, Pastor. And they don't notice if your clothes reflect the latest fashions. They do notice whether we show them genuine love and concern, though. Children have that uncanny ability to spot a phony. Yeah, they do. Years and years and years ago, my husband and I were on the evangelistic trail for 14 and a half years total, but we did it, we were part-time evangelists. And we went to this one church in another state, completely different state, and there was a person there that I had always had kind of an odd feeling about, but I never expressed that, and I didn't tell my husband about it, and I didn't tell our little boy about it. Bobby, our oldest, he's 38 now, so this was many years ago. I think he was about 3 or 4 at the time. And we were, he might have been a little bit older, let's say 5 or 6. And we were at this church, and he just shied away from this person. Never met them before in his life. And got into my skirts. Mommies, you know what that's all about. And you're trying to talk to people, and they're just holding on for dear life. And later when we went home, my husband said, why did he do that? That was not Bobby's normal behavior, especially he liked people and he liked to be around new people and make new friends. And I said, he is sensing something in that person, in their spirit or in their behavior or something, because children can spot that. They can, trust them. That's something all parents should learn. We have to trust their instincts because they do feel and sense those things. So they do spot a phony. They can tell who really cares and who does not, and they respond accordingly. I know when I drive up to Sister Haley's house, there's a little bitty one in the window waiting and just waving, 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 full force, because I'm there, because she knows I love her. When I get to Arkansas and I visit my granddaughter there, I can hear her through the door. She's here. Darlin's here. She's here. She's here. Because she's excited because I treat her right. And not only do I treat her right, and it's not like spoiling, because I don't have that kind of money to spoil, right? But what it is they feel the love. They know that I accept them, that I receive them as they are, that even when they misbehave, and I might have to get stern, that later on I'm still going to give them love. I'm still going to give them hugs, and I'm still going to be with them and play games with them because they trust that. Children do. Children usually can't repay that love that we show them either. Our biggest offerings at New Life probably don't come from the toddler class. I'm guessing. And they don't give their Sunday school teachers birthday cards stuffed with cash. You wish they would, right? But they don't, probably. Ministering to children who require so much and return so little usually doesn't bring us earthly reward or recognition. But Jesus assured us that when we humbly receive the weakest and lowliest in his name, we are receiving him. Oh, that's powerful. When you are a Sunday school teacher down these hallways, you are receiving Christ because you are ministering in his name to the lowliest. You're giving your all to someone who cannot repay it. That is ministering. That is serving someone else. Jesus also promised that we have a heavenly Father who openly rewards the good that is done in secret. Matthew 6 and 18. We're not reading that, but actually, let's do. We have a few minutes. I don't have it on. I didn't give it to him as a scripture to put on the board. That's why it's important to bring your Bibles. Oops, sorry. Didn't mean to say that, did I, Pastor? I like to carry my Bible if I can remember to have it with me. Matthew 6:4 says this, that thine alms may be in secret, and thy Father which seeth in secret himself shall reward thee openly. Verse 6, but thou, when thou prayest, enter into thy closet, and when thou hast shut thy door, pray to thy Father which is in secret, and thy Father which seeth in secret shall reward thee openly. And verse 18, that thou appear not unto men to fast, but unto thy Father which is in secret, and thy Father which seeth in secret shall reward thee openly. There are 3 places there. He said, when you give, do it in secret. When you pray, do it in secret. And when you fast, do it in secret. Those are 3 disciplines of a Christian that Jesus is saying, do it in secret. Because, it's not that we do give our offering publicly, but no one needs to know what you gave, except for the church secretary. No one else needs to know that, because you need to give it as unto God and do it willingly and cheerfully. This is definitely not in my notes. I'm just throwing it in there. It's important to give to the Lord, to give to him faithfully and give to him cheerfully. So Jesus said, if you receive the weakest and lowliest in his name, you're receiving him. And then the things that you do in secret, he'll reward you openly. He'll give you things. When others can't figure out why you're being blessed, you know why you're being blessed. When you give, God rewards that openly. According to Jesus, true greatness is showing kindness to others in a spirit of humility. Mark 9:35, again, if any man desires to be first, the same shall be last of all and servant of all. Greatness is volunteering to teach that Sunday school class when no one else wants to teach it. Greatness is changing dirty diapers and wiping runny noses in the church nursery without complaining. I don't know. I worked in nursery a time or two, and I complained. I wasn't very much of a servant because I didn't like that job. I don't mind changing my own kids' diapers or my grandkids' diapers, but I'm not fond of changing other kids' diapers. So, I wasn't very servant-hearted when I worked in nursery. But those who do, and who do so without complaining, God is seeing that. He's going to reward that. It's blisters and calluses at an all-church workday. I've had a lot of those. Spent an entire 12 to 13-hour day just cleaning the church and working at the church. Not here. I will if you ever ask me to. I will, but I have done that. It's showing up for prayer meeting after a long day at work. There you go, Pastor. I got your plug in. When you really just want to go home. Oh, there are so many nights. I sit in that apartment and I'm all snug and warm and cozy, and it's cold outside, and I'm like, prayer meeting. But I need to be there because I was asked to be there, and it's part of my servanthood. It's part of me serving the Lord. It's faithfully serving on your job. Here we go. Here's our secular influence. It's faithfully serving on your job even when your boss doesn't seem to notice. It's remaining faithful to a struggling marriage with an unsaved spouse. And it's responding to hate with kindness and choosing reconciliation over retaliation. Oh, we all want to retaliate. There's nobody in here that's perfect. I'm certainly not. And I feel the same need to retaliate when somebody's hateful to me. But Jesus is asking us to go beyond. And if you want to be first, you need to be last. And somebody who's last is not going to retaliate. They're going to respond with kindness even when someone treats them terribly. Greatness is having a servant's heart. There was an evangelical pastor, his name was Erwin Lutzer, and he is quoted as saying this: "How do you know when you have a servant's heart?" The answer? Look at how you act, how you react when you're treated like a servant. When somebody treats you like a servant, how do you react? That's how you know if you have a servant's heart. None of us appreciates being treated inferior to anyone else. But Jesus said this, John 15:18. "If the world hate you, you know that it hated me before it hated you." He's stating the obvious there, isn't he? He's like, do you think you're any better than me? They hated me, so why wouldn't they hate you? He said his contemporaries didn't even recognize his greatness until after they had crucified him. I know authors and poets and artists that their works weren't even glorified, or people didn't pay high prices for them until after their death. They didn't realize that they were as good as they were while they were still living. Well, this is why the way it was with Jesus, his contemporaries, the people that were with him, didn't even recognize how great he was until after he was gone. So, like our master, we are more likely to carry a cross than we are to wear a medal. Right? Not likely to win any awards down here for being humble or being a servant. You're more likely to carry a cross. People are more likely to abuse you as a Christian. I want to tell this story, but I want to be very careful. A family member, there was a very difficult time in our family, and I was asked to do something that physically I was unable to do. Financially, I was unable to do. And I got a really awful email from this person that started off by throwing the dart of, "I thought you were a Christian." And I was struck. I was hurt because I thought, this has nothing to do with me being a Christian. My response to this situation was not based on my Christianity. It was based on my physical needs. I didn't financially have the ability to do what they asked me to do, so I had to decline their request. And I was crucified for it. I was physically and emotionally and verbally abused over this situation. And to this day, as far as I know, that person has never forgiven me for being a bad Christian. Okay? So I'm just telling you a truthful situation, and I'm being careful because these are always recorded, and I don't ever want this person to think I named them or where they were or who they were or whatever. But it hurt because the fact that they threw my Christianity out there as being poor. I'm like, no, my Christianity is still firm, and I didn't do or say anything wrong. I just declined a request. So sometimes that happens to us, right? So sometimes we have to wear a cross and we don't get the medal. That was one of those days I got the cross and not the medal. So, what did you want to be when you were young? You ask a little one, a fireman, a policeman, right? They always want to be something. They always say these things. Sometimes, as they get a little bit older, they'll say a doctor, lawyer. We have this picture he's going to put up in a moment. But you might have dreamed one day of holding a job that came with prestige and a large paycheck, like a doctor, a lawyer, professional athlete. But as we grew older, we might have abandoned those dreams for various reasons. For some, it was because we discovered joy and fulfillment in another line of work that more closely matched our gifts. Don't you love it when you discover something that matches your gifts? This is what I'm gifted with. I've always enjoyed writing and always enjoyed teaching. And I guess those are gifts that the Lord has given me. And I enjoyed doing them. And I've made the times that I've enjoyed making money, it's been using those gifts. I've made money in other ways. I worked at a factory. We produced spark plug wires. And funny story, true story. At 3 times a night, we changed the writing on the spark plug wires, but the spark plug wires didn't change. For a while, they said Sears. For a while, they said Kmart. And for a while, they said one of the other spark plug, whatever the brand name is. It's the same spark plug. Just saying. Worked in a factory. I know it's a fact. But anyway, I worked in that factory, and I wore my dress, and I lived my life, and I didn't do any of the things, didn't talk about my wild weekend, because I didn't have one, unless you count shouting in church wild. I didn't have those kind, but I worked in a factory and did those things. But I didn't enjoy necessarily the job. I did it because it was a paycheck. I needed to pay bills. And I made good friends, and I lived my life. I lived the witness before those people, so I can never regret that. But the joy that I receive is in using my gifts. And I'm thankful that God allows us to do this. Many successful individuals have found that serving others and financial reward are not mutually exclusive. That means they can happen at the same time. You can make your money and help and serve others at the same time. God gives you gifts to be used for Him in serving Him and serving others. And it's always a huge blessing when He benefits you financially as well through those. Ultimately, we serve others by serving God. As we follow Him and submit to His word, He will direct us into the areas of service that most closely match our talents and temperament. He created us to serve with joy, not to spend our days just chasing a paycheck or fulfilling someone else's dream for our life. He loves us, and He's prepared a place for us in His kingdom. Yes, He's prepared heaven for us, but He's also prepared a place for us here in His kingdom, a place of service, a place that we can serve Him. Now, I have a couple of other, I think he's got the next clips that he's going to put up. These are photo collages that I made up. Whenever they come up, I'll talk about them. Actually, these are real live people that I know serving. Are you able to get them out? Okay. In fact, the one on the top left, that's my niece, Cynthia. She's visited us here before. This is at the church that they go to, also a New Life in St. Louis. So I borrowed these pictures from them to show various ways that people serve in their church. I actually have worked this same food pantry when I attended there for 8 months. Brought me great joy. But when Cynthia sent them to me, she said, I wanted to include pictures of little ones, showing you little ones can help serve too. There are children that go to the food pantry and help their parents because it's important to start teaching them when they're here how to serve. And there are people that have other jobs and make better money, and they're there at that food pantry serving. The next slide, please. Also another clip of service at the church there. It will come up. There it is. Okay, they're making, I'm not sure, I think they were putting together like back-to-school kits. Now, I never worked that one, but that's a way of serving. I know even the little church that we pastored, we participated in the back-to-school fair every year in our community and took backpacks and helped distribute the school supplies. I mean, there were donations from businesses around, and they had tables, but we always had a booth. And I got Bible studies from those booths. I had a little free Bible study thing out front, and so people could sign up. And, so you can serve your community and serve God. This is a way you can do it. So these people are like this young teenager, the young black girl. I know her. Her parents are just wonderful people. She's doing something in the church office, typing something up. And the little children are moving tables and chairs in the fellowship hall. They're helping out. The little guy there with the vacuum. They're all working. That's just more than cleaning the church. That's serving. It's serving the kingdom. And that's what they're learning there. So, what about a desire for position? Is that just completely wrong? Let's talk about that. We get into trouble when we prioritize position above service. Matthew 19:28, Jesus promised those 12 disciples that they would sit upon 12 thrones, judging the 12 tribes of Israel. But in Mark 10:35, James and John came to Jesus with a follow-up request. Matthew records that they drafted their mother. Come on, Mom, speak for us. Help us out here, right? In presenting their petition, when Jesus asked what they wanted, these two brothers responded, grant unto us that we may sit, one on thy right hand and the other on thy left hand in thy glory. That's Mark 10:37. Let me go and read this. James and John, sons of Zebedee, came unto him, saying, Master, we would that thou shouldest do for us whatsoever we shall desire. Do for us. We deserve this, right? But 37, they ask, Jesus, let us sit one on either side of you in glory. We want to sit. We want to be right there beside you because we know you're the top dog. We want to be right there with you, right? Jesus responded by essentially saying, you don't even know what you're asking for. Many people are guilty of only seeing the perks or certain positions while conveniently overlooking the sacrifices and the struggles behind the scenes. There's a lot of struggle and sacrifice that goes on behind the scenes. My husband would call these armchair referees. Somebody who sits in their couch or their armchair and tells the coach how they should make the team players, right, make their plays. I'll get it right. I'm not a sports person. But he would sit there and he'd say, they're armchair referees. They're trying to tell them how to do it. They don't know. They're not there. They don't see the players' real weaknesses and strengths. But you can sit back and tell other people how to do it, right? You're a bleacher coach, an armchair referee. You're going to tell somebody how to run it, but you don't understand all the sacrifices and all the hard work that goes into leadership. I can't tell you the times the ball was dropped back into my lap that I had given somebody a couple months before to take care of, and they didn't do it, and then I had to do it. That's a sacrifice I had to make in leadership. even though I didn't deserve it having dropped in my lap. But that's one of those things that happens. So you might think, oh, wow, he's exalted. He's got this position. He's got it made. She's got it made. But you don't realize how much they have to give up. People want to be the leader until a crisis arises. In those moments, then we're content to sit back and just, oh, well, I would have done it this way. Right? I don't like the way they handle it. I would have done differently. But also, you breathe a big sigh of relief. Glad it wasn't you that had to handle it, right? It's easy to become frustrated when it seems God is overlooking us while promoting others. But he knows just how much we can handle. And he loves us too much to give us everything we think we want when we want it. God knows exactly when we're ready for the pressure that will come at the next level of service. Trust me, every time you raise a level in service to the Lord, there's more pressure involved, more responsibilities, more pressure. And it's better to bloom where he plants us. There you go. Look at that. Daisies growing out of the pavement. It's better to just bloom wherever you're planted than to be destroyed by being promoted too quickly. He knows when we're ready, and when the time is right, the right door will open. In the meantime, let us serve the kingdom by serving others. God will call our number, and we will experience success because we trusted his timing. Unfortunately for James and John, the other 10 disciples overheard them, and they were not happy about it. Their response really indicated they thought to themselves, I should have been the one to ask Jesus that. Instead of being disturbed that it was asked, they were like mad because they didn't ask it first, right? This presented Jesus with another prime opportunity to share an important kingdom principle with his closest followers. They were imitating Gentile rulers by seeking after power and position. Jesus said this, Mark 10:42. He called them to him, and he said unto them, you know that they which are accounted to rule over the Gentiles exercise lordship over them. That's the way the Gentiles do it, he said. And their great ones exercise authority upon them. But it shall not be among you. But whosoever will be great among you shall be your minister. And whosoever of you will be the chiefest shall be the servant of all. He said, used his own life as an example, and he said, the Son of Man came not to be ministered to, this is Mark 10:45, but to minister, and to give his life a ransom for many. He said, are you not paying attention? We've been talking here for about 3.5 years. You've just not paid much attention. I've been trying to tell you that I didn't come to lord it over anybody, even though I am Lord. I came to serve. This is my job. To see that shining example of servant leadership, we simply look at Jesus Christ. He turned 12 ordinary men into a movement that claimed more than 2.5 billion followers as recorded in 2020. There were 2.5 billion people who said that they served Jesus Christ. He did not commission his followers to make converts by the sword or by some other display of power, but rather by putting God first and loving your neighbor as yourself. What did he say the first commandment is? Love God, right? Second is like this. Wow, that is a powerful sword. The second is like this. Love your neighbor as yourself. If you love you, you'll love your neighbor. You'll treat them like they need to be treated because you'll treat them like you want to be treated. Okay, this third picture collage, I have another one of service by these people of that church. Like I said, I'm not exalting that church. These are just pictures I was able to obtain. And I do appreciate the servanthood of that church. I do think that they have a great atmosphere of serving. Sunday school teacher. They have a Friends Day in the fall, and a huge amount of people are out there serving. They serve meal free to hundreds of community people, and they do all these things. And then down below, this gentleman, and I know him too, he also works the food pantry, and here he is praying with someone, giving someone a study. That's serving. You don't have to do it up here. I'm serving today. This is serving. I was asked, and I obeyed. But this is not the only way you can serve. You can serve in so many ways. Brother Gordon, you start asking people. Ask them to serve in all kinds of ways. And that's the way you're going to find the most joy. Serving others means telling them about Jesus. Like the book of Acts believers, we're also called to turn our world upside down. God does not hold us accountable for what we cannot control. He simply calls us to take responsibility for what happens within our own sphere of influence. It begins with serving a friend or a neighbor in deed. I'm going to quickly go through this internalizing the message part. Washing the feet was considered a menial task, far beneath the dignity of an esteemed teacher like Jesus. My oldest son served in Iraq, and in the military, they prepared them for this deployment. One of the things they told them was how not to offend the people of Middle Eastern cultures. And one of those was like men many times will sit and prop one leg over their knee and their foot will face someone. And they tell them not to do that because in that culture, showing your foot is an insult because your foot contains everything that you've stepped on that day, right? They were considered the dirtiest part of a person: dust, mud, manure, bugs, refuse, trash, whatever, it's on your foot. And so to show someone the bottom of your foot is an insult to those people. But Jesus stooped down and washed his disciples' feet. And he insisted on doing it. John 13:8. Peter said unto him, Thou shalt never wash my feet. Jesus answered him, If I wash thee not, thou hast no part with me. He said, I'm trying to show you that I'm getting ready to shed my blood on the cross for your spiritual cleansing. And you need to understand this. And John 13:12, Jesus finished making his way around the table, and he put his robe back on, and he took his seat, and he said, Know you what I have done to you? Again, he's asking them to pay attention. I've served you. You're going to serve others the same way. You need to take note of this. And then John 13:14. Jesus broke the silence. He answered his own question. He said, If I then, your Lord and Master, have washed your feet, you also ought to wash one another's feet. As they heard these words, James and John probably thought back to the earlier requests that embarrassed them, how they had asked to be at Jesus' right and left hand. And they thought maybe that was pretty silly to have asked that. That was pretty ambitious anyway. But one thing is certain, the disciples eventually did grasp that message that Jesus wanted to convey. They spent their lives serving others and establishing the church that Jesus had envisioned. Eventually, they even gave their lives as martyrs for the sake of the gospel. Last scripture, Philippians 2:5-7. Let this mind be in you, which was also in Christ Jesus, who being in the form of God, thought it not robbery to be equal with God, made himself of no reputation, and took upon him the form of a servant, and was made in the likeness of men. Let's all be servants for the kingdom. God bless you.
The wisdom that she shared with us this morning. Amen. Before we end, I want Seth to run up here real quick. I'm going to give an analogy that was running through my mind as she is teaching when she posed the question, how do you know if you have the mind or heart of a servant? It's when someone treats you like one. And so it reminded me, I don't remember what book I read it from, but Seth is going to portray on the outside of a hotel. He's standing here. He is a highly known, recognized motivational speaker. This is a true story. He's standing there. There is a thing of luggage here. Imagine this. He's waiting for his ride to be picked up. And, you know, if you've ever been in front of a big, massive hotel, there's cars coming and going, and he's waiting for his ride. And all of a sudden, a car comes in, a big old fancy Lincoln or something nice. They come in, pop the trunk. He's standing there beside the luggage. And out of the hotel rushes a man, and he comes here, and he smacks this guy that's casually dressed. He says, you need to put my luggage in the car. And this guy starts putting his luggage in his car. A little more eloquently than that. And the rich CEO of this massive company reached in his wallet, started giving him money. And he says, I don't want your money. He said, I don't work for the hotel. He said, well, why did you put my luggage in the car? And the guy says, because you asked me to. They began talking, and he found out that he's a motivational speaker. And long story short, the CEO had him come speak to his company. But the point is this, is that he's just standing there innocently, no reason to help the guy out. But when he was asked, he just had the heart of a servant to do something that he had no obligation in doing, did it with no intent of receiving anything in return. That's the heart of a servant. Let's stand to our feet. Thank you, Brother Seth, for being a servant today. Thank you, Sister Holman. I always enjoy her teaching. What a wonderful job she did. We're going to transition over to Sunday school, or from Sunday school to worship service. Just step across the aisle, greet one another in Jesus' name. God bless you. Thank you for your faithfulness in being here.